Is my screen visible to all?
Yes, Prashant.
Yeah, Prashant.
Okay. So today I'm going to show you how you can make the uh, configuration change in parallel mode, means in rolling manner. For example, if you have 100 servers to patch, or let's say 100 servers to install web server, or 100 servers to change the running web server configuration. So obviously you will not be you don't want to all 100 servers to be changed all of a sudden, because if something goes wrong, obviously all 100 servers will be affected. So for that, to overcome that problem, we have a serial parallelism in Ansible, which is to improve the effect, or your change effect in the servers. So for that, we can mention that how many servers you want to configure, or how many servers you want to do the change parallel. So let's say if you have 100 servers, you can say 5 servers at a time, or you can say first do 5 servers, then you do 20 servers, and then you do remaining all, so that your 5 servers will be available very first with new changes to serve the traffic, and then in next shot your 20 servers will be added, and then in next shot all remaining servers, so all will be with a new configuration. You can mention as a percentage also, like if you don't know how many servers are there in that group, you can mention in the percentage also, like if you have, obviously if there are 100 servers, you can mention 10% servers should be patched very first, and then remaining 20% should be in next lot, and then remaining 70%, whatever the remaining 70% should be done at last. And you can mention like if there are minimum failure if more than, let's say, 20%. So by any chance, if your 20 servers are failed due to whatever reasons, consider abort this task immediately. So then it will not continue to the remaining servers, because 20 servers are failed means there is some serious problem with your, either your playbook, or maybe with repo, or maybe with something else. So that's how you need to you can mention the serialism in your playbook. So I don't have that many servers here, so I'll just show you how to make that note in your playbook, but I will not be able to show you practical stuff, because I have only 2 servers, virtual servers running here. uh, some mm, some France, Germany, or GBU meeting is there, 2:30 to 8 o'clock. If anybody wants to join that, they can join. Otherwise, we can join after this call. It will take hardly 1 hour today, so you can check. Okay, so you can see my screen. So let me come back here, and I'll write a playbook to show you. So we are writing a new playbook. Serial not YAML. Okay. Okay. Show serial configuration. So I want to install this web server HTTPD on my all infra group servers. I don't know how many servers are there in the infra group. So I just want to make sure that at least some of the servers should be available always to serve the traffic. In that case, I can mention here serial, and I can mention 5. So if I mention only one number, that means do 5 servers at a time. Now let's say infra has 100 servers. So you cannot define that these servers should come first, these servers should come last. That it will pick sequence basis as they have mentioned in the inventory file. So it will check host, it will check infra group. Infra group has, let's say, 100 servers, 1 to 50. So it will execute in the same order as it is mentioned in the inventory file. Now I'm mentioning 5, so it will pick first 5, it will execute, it will perform the change. If everything fine, then it will come go back to the 6 to 10 lot, then 11 to 15, then 16 to 20, like this. It will continue in 5 servers in each lot. That is something you can manage one at a time. Okay. Now let's say I want to do don't do 5 servers each time, because 100 servers, so it will take time. 20 lots it has to finish, 20 iterations, so it will take time. What I can do is I can mention like 5. First time it do 5, first time it should do 5, then next time it should do 10, and the remaining time, last time, it should do all. So in this case, you need to be aware that how many servers are there, because you are mentioning the number of servers. So now I know that there are 95 servers. I made first 5, second 10, and last 80 servers, and all done. You can mention percentage also, like first time you do 5%, next time you do 10%, and next time you do 85. So in this case, it will check, it will calculate the how many servers infra group has. It will calculate the 5% of that. It will pick from the first lot, make the changes. Once server are up, it will pick the remaining 10% of servers, do the change, and then next time 85% of the servers finish the change, and playbook is completed. Then for this, if there are any failure, to check that min failure or something comment is there, there you can mention 30%. So if 30% of my servers are failing, consider this playbook as failed and abort the change immediately. So once we execute this, it will make sure that the servers mentioned here should be done very fast, or should be done only parallel. Any question?
Based on the, if it is our initial 5% it will be doing, at that time 30% failure happened, then immediately it will stop, or it will
At any
calculate
point of
all
time,
the.
30%, no, it is for all. It is for
Okay.
all. Okay. So this is serialism, this is parallelism, how to do rolling, how to do the changes in the rolling manner. And then okay, before doing that thing further, there is another topic called Jinja to template, which is very much important. And I'll give you the URL. This is standard documentation, Ansible documentation to understand Jinja to templating. And for this, we use template module. I told you yesterday also. Jinja to template is nothing but it is supported by Python to make the dynamic this one templates. If you look at that page, it has most of the time it has using loops, it is using conditions, and sometimes it is using the filters as well. And Jinja to this is the URL you can use to understand what all things we can achieve using Jinja 2 template. And obviously these all things you can incorporate with your Ansible template module to make a dynamic template. Template is nothing but it could be your configuration file. Most of the time you use Jinja 2 template to make your dynamic configuration file only. How? Let's discuss. So here I'm modifying the configuration. Let's make it conf.j2. Jinja 2 file extension is j2. So what I'm doing here is I'm just copying this configuration file, which is my Jinja 2 template file, and making this file as my HTTPD configuration file for all my remote nodes. And once it is done, it will be having 755 permission, root, owner, and group. And before making any changes, it should take the backup. And obviously, if I'm doing any change, then I need to call the handler. So notify restart HTTPD, and then I have handlers. Any doubts so far? Any questions so far?
No.
Okay. I had already the
Prashant,
HTTP. Yeah.
in that notify when we are using restart underscore HTTP, is it a keyword or any name we can give?
This name you can give anything.
Okay. So the
It is
handler should
your,
have the same name, right?
yes. Make sure the
Okay.
name you are mentioning inside notify, this name should be same in the handler name. You can mention like this also, restart underscore space HTTPD. You can mention like this also, no
Okay.
problem. But it is recommended if you're having space, then make sure it should be in double quotes.
Okay.
Prashant, I have a doubt here. Just a general uh, way of saying that we are putting these names as the topics, and then we perform some action. Then we
Mm-hmm.
mention the name or handlers, and then we perform actions. Though
Yeah.
so these are options, even though obviously in starting like understanding the Ansible for the first time, we cannot
Mm-hmm.
remember these keywords for the forever, right? So
Yeah.
even though I can pick these keywords from the library, but
Mm-hmm.
I do not know if I have to use them or not. Like,
So the thing is, like, let's say I'm using Ansible service module to restart a service. Okay. So to
okay,
restart a service, what do you need to know? You need to know only the name, service name, right? So
Yes.
you can use only the service name here and the status. What status do you want? So I used state and name. Now let's say you are creating a user. Okay. So if somebody asks you just to create the user, you just create the user for me and I want to use this user account. He didn't say
Okay.
you that you make this comment, you add this user to this group and it should be member of these many groups, or it should have this password. He just asks you to create a user, that's it. So what will you do? You just use the user add command and username and that's it. You don't worry about UID, BID, comments,
Correct.
so same way
Correct.
here also, whatever things you want to use, you can use those parameters of that module. Every module will have n number of parameters. That doesn't mean I have to use everything.
Okay.
Whatever things you want, you can use. You can refer the documentation, and whatever things are mandatory to use, those things you have to mention every time. Optionals, it's up to you. If you want to use, you can use. Otherwise, you can skip.
Okay.
So same way
Okay.
here, if I'm creating the user, I can just say, just to show you.
And the sequence of these keywords are also doesn't matter, right? The
Doesn't
source.
matter.
Okay.
Doesn't matter. So here I'm using user module. Now if I go back here, Ansible doc user, it has these many parameters: append, comment, create home, expires,
Right.
force, generate SSH groups. These are all available if I want to use for some of the deeper level configuration change. That doesn't mean I have to use everything. And here also you can see it is optionally, means if you want to use it, you can use. Password is optional. Every time you don't need to set the password to the user. If they are asking to set some password, then you can use this parameter, set the password for that user. Otherwise, leave it.
Okay.
Then remove SE user, shell, skeleton, SSH key. And then if you come back down here also, you can see here in the example also, they are not using everything at a time. Here they are saying name, shell, groups, append. In the next example, they are saying name, state, and remove. That's it.
Okay.
So it's up to you. Whatever things you want, you can use those parameters. And it's initially, obviously, it will be difficult to remember the parameters. Every time you have to refer this documentation. Once you start using, you might be using some of the modules each and every day. So those modules you will be familiar every time that what parameters I have to use. Some new requirement is coming, then you have to refer the documentation to understand parameters.
Okay.
Initially, it will take some time.
So it's all about practice, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
Okay. So okay, I'll delete it. So I did this. Now nobody asked me why this conf became conf.j2, because now I'm making this file as Jinja2 template, and when executing, then when Ansible is executing this template, during execution time, it will perform the action whatever I have written in the Jinja2 template to make a static file for the Ansible Apache configuration. Right now it should be in J2 format, which might have or might not have dynamic things, means loops and if condition, which you can see the URL I have given you, the second URL. If you look at this, okay, let me open in my screen. So Jinja2 template will be like this. It might have some static contents, some dynamic content. So here you can see it is saying that you create a HTML file header, but that header information should have some dynamic values. It can have. So how they are generating the dynamic values? They are writing a loop here, for loop, and grabbing the values from users group, and then those users they are adding here in the format user.url and user.username. So they are making a list kind of things. So these are the things. If you say filters, comments, so if you want to write a line, you can write like this, and then in middle they have user loop. So I'm also going to do the same thing and to show you like how to use a Jinja2 template to form a configuration file. So to do that, whatever configuration file you have downloaded, like httpd.conf, you just need to rename it to .j2 at the last. That's it. And now my file is ready here. Now in this file, okay, before going further, Ansible provides some magic variables, you can say system variables. So we saw yesterday that Ansible was providing some facts and which was having so many variables of which was having systems information, metadata like user, network information, disk information, platform information, and all those stuff. Now Ansible provides some magic variables also which to use, which will be obviously standard and which have the values. Every time you use them, you will get the different values. There are few magic variables which you might use every time to form the condition, as well as in the Jinja 2 template as well. This one. So the Jinja variables, magic variables are very commonly used is inventory underscore hostname. This one. Inventory underscore hostname provides your current host which is actually dealing with Ansible. So obviously, if I have written this playbook and here I said group is infra, and infra will have 10 servers, let's say, Ansible will be performing the change one server at a time, right? So that current server, what is that current server, you can grab, you can filter out using that magic variable inventory underscore hostname. So if you want to just print out in the message in the screen that what server it is running on, so you can just say inventory underscore hostname, and when it is executing, it will show you the output on screen with that inventory underscore hostname value, whatever the hostname it is running on. Then another group is the commonly used group is groups and group names. Groups is providing the one host is part of. So let's say I have one server web01. I want to test whether this web01 server is part of my web group. So that kind of condition I check with this groups magic variable. I just say here I can, in this configuration file only I'm using. This is not the standard configuration, just to show you I'm Jinja 2 template how to write. I'm just showing you, and I'm just writing some for loop and condition here, and then during execution it will have one static value in the real-time configuration file. So to initiate the if condition, I'm saying if inventory underscore hostname in groups web. This is a standard syntax to write a condition if. So I'm saying if inventory hostname means whichever host it is executing right now, if that hostname is part of web group. I told you groups is something to fetch all the hosts of that particular group. In it is something kind of condition operator provided by Python. So that's why I said you need to understand Python basic at least, so that you will be familiar what to use and when. So I'm saying if inventory hostname in groups webs, then you write this. You write this hostname inventory underscore hostname at the bottom. Okay. Now after this, I'm saying for host name in groups now I'm saying you collect all the hosts from web, iterate over those hosts, and print the value here. Okay, so that I'm saying this is the variable, so I need to put inside this because it should have value. If I put double braces, then only it will extract the value of that variable. So here also same thing, inventory, sorry, host name, and then I'm saying host name. Okay, there is another variable called host vars to collect the facts information from a function from this magic variable. We were collecting through Ansible underscore whatever variable we were collecting. The same details you can collect using this function also, like this host vars, and then the host name, and then whichever fact you want to collect and display in the this one generative template. So I'm saying here is host where's, then host name, inventory, or you can say host name, and then Ansible distribution, let's say. I'll write the comment here. Ansible to template comments. Okay. Any doubt so far? Anybody?
Where is this file, Prashant? It's http://conf.j2. You have created new one or you edited
I had
existing?
downloaded yesterday, right, to make the configuration change http://conf from one of the remote node, and then same file I have renamed to conf.j2.
Okay, this is in your local machine.
Yeah, local workstation.
Okay.
This file I'm going to push to the remote nodes, and during execution time, it will execute this if condition and this loop and whatever dynamic things are there. It will execute, collect the values what it should be, and paste here as a static information to the remote nodes while pushing the file.
Okay.
Got it? So I have saved it. Now let me make some more entries in the web group so that you will understand how many servers are there. Sudo vi Ansible hosts. All good. Web 2 unreachable, that's fine. Failed Ansible undefined variable host name. Okay. That's fine. Ansible distribution. This is host. Okay. Okay. Channel configuration host is undefined. Okay, so it changed into RHEL node because obviously Ubuntu does not have that directory. In Ubuntu, it is etc Apache 2. So let's check in RHEL node. And let's enter etc conf.httpd. Yes, we have. It took. This is the file. Let's get it. Okay. It got the value, but oh, okay. There's a syntax problem. That's why it got this host name to static value, but this is showing the condition also here. So let's remove it, and that could be the reason it was not picking. So let's add for loop also now for host and groups web. Then host vars host Ansible distribution. Save it and then again. Keyboard Ansible distribution. What is that? Okay. it is same and for this. Let's move facts. What is this? Just a second, guys. Some issue, I think. It should come from this. I don't know why it is not picking. Hosting groups at servers for firstwares. Ansible 0, APB 4 and 4. Let me copy this here. Ansible at 0. Okay, I think because okay, destination directory is okay. The problem was that unreachable server, because obviously that server was not exist, so it was giving the error from that point only, because that server only is not reachable, so it was not able to collect the facts of that server. So that's why it was giving error and it was not able to reach to the next server. So what I did here is I just added two more lines in my configuration file, because for my configuration I need the server name also of my all web servers, and the server which is part of my, if the current server also is if whether current server is part of my web group, mention that server. If it is not part of that group, obviously it will not mention, because it will not come inside the condition, and mention all my web servers. So two condition I had put. Now let's check our configuration file how it is now. We have the comment which I had mentioned, and 192.168.102 IP address of my web server, which is Ubuntu, and IP address of this server is Ubuntu server is this one, 192.168.1102. And because here I'm saying mention all the servers. Okay, let me mention here host name also, then you will understand. I can mention either inventory underscore host name, which is the default one, or I can mention the host. But inventory host name, then it will mention the current server, not the server of which is actually I'm dealing with inside this loop. So when you are using the magic variables, make sure you are using correctly when it is required. So here I'm saying host, and then this is the information. Let's execute again. Okay, now let's cat again, and now you see we got the host name of the server of which is part of my web group, and its IP address. Obviously this Ubu node IP address is 102, this server IP address is 104, I think. Yeah, 103. 102 is this one, which is part of my web group. Obviously my web has Ubu node only, and that's the reason we are not having above the Ubu node, because I have put the condition here, if inventory underscore host name, because the current server means the current server which you are dealing with, if that is part of my web group, then you mention here, because RHEL node, this server when it is executing this server is not part of my web group, that server is part of my DB group. So that's why it didn't mention here the first line. But then I'm saying for host, loop over all the servers in web group and mention the server name and their IP address here. So because I have only one server, so I got the output here. If I had 100 servers, so let's say yesterday I was telling you that you have to update host file, etc host file with 100 servers, you can just loop over with this, and when the file is actually getting generated, you will have 100 servers listed here like this: server name, IP address, server name, IP address. Now if I modify this condition, this one, if I say here mention DB, if the server is part of my DB group, then mention here. Then when it is executing, it will check RHEL node is part of DB group, yes it is, and it will mention its host name. So let's save it and run it again, and this time you should see that host name. See RHEL node, because that is part of my DB group, and then this condition. So that's how you write dynamic Jinja 2 template. There is much more, you can refer that documentation. And the overall, I would like to say, that is to make the dynamic configuration, you can mix and match your static contents as well as loops, condition inside to form a proper configuration file. You can use variables. See here you can say I'm using variables, I'm using conditions, I'm using loops, and then finally my one static file getting generated, but contents are dynamic depending upon the conditions or loops I have written here. Same way, let's say in my inventory file, I was using the port. I told you yesterday that inventory file you can mention a particular variable, right, in front of your host name, Apache. Let's say your custom variable, let's say Apache underscore port equals to 90. So that port also you can use here like this. And when your playbook is getting executed, it will find out whether you have mentioned this variable either inside your variables, your variable file you have included in your playbook. If it is not available, then it will check your inventory file. If that inventory file has mentioned anywhere, it will check whether this port variable is declared, and whatever the value you have mentioned there, it will just collect and mention in front of the listener. So Jinja 2 template is basically to use your variables, loops, conditions to form a static file, but with dynamic contents. That's all in Jinja 2.
Okay, so this file should be on the source server and it should be of extension .j2, right?
Yes.
Okay.
If you are making a Jinja 2 template, it should be J2.
Okay.
Because then only you can use these variables, conditions, loops. if you make only conf and you are mentioning like this, it will, in the configuration file, it will go like this. It will not extract the value of this, because now it doesn't know what is the value of this until you mention J2.
Okay.
Okay. In exam, it comes, the question, very first question was to configure, to download one configuration file of Apache configuration. They had given a custom configuration file. You need to download that file using get URL module. They had specifically mentioned that you need to download that file using get URL module. And then they asked to change something and then push to the remote nodes. So that's where there was a change. There was a, kind of problem. It took some 30 minutes for me to remember one concept which I'm going to discuss now. Because when you use get URL module, it will download the file into the remote node only. It will not download on your local node. So when it is downloaded there, and now you have to change the configuration. So first you need to pull that file to your local node, then again you have to push back. So that was a challenge. So there is another concept called delegation. So I'm going to discuss now after that. So any doubt on this, Jinja 2, before we proceed?
So this is a static file, right? And wherever we want our values to be changed, we need to just put that Jinja code there.
Yes.
Okay.
Jinja code means which could be variable, which could be condition, which could be loop, and many more. You can refer that documentation.
Okay.
Anybody else?
No question.
Okay. So there is another thing before I continue. There is another thing called filters. If you look at the first URL I had given you, there is a concept called filters. Filters are actually applied on a value which you specifically used inside the Jinja 2 template only. So like okay, so let's say you are getting some IP address here in this example only. You are getting the IP address using this variable. You are getting the IP address of this host. Now you need to mention if that IP address is part of IPv4 series, then only you mention. If it is part of IPv6, don't mention. So to apply those conditions, you can mention the filter here. So another one filter is actually IPv6 something. You can refer this documentation. You can a filter will be applied like this: one pipe and then filter method. So IPv4. Okay. So I'm saying here IPv6 means if this IP address is IPv6 series, then only you mention here. Now you save it and then run again and see this time IP address will not come because that is not IPv6. Apache port is undefined. Okay. So that variable is undefined, it says, because I have not declared that variable anywhere. So remove it. Okay, that is done. Coming here, cat, this time it is saying false, means that IP address that I got, it's not IPv6. So it says IPv false. I want to make sure that if it is IPv4, then only you declare here. So I can mention an IPv4. Then again. And this time I got the IP address. So this is filter is kind of extra action you want to apply. So there you can mention something like upper. I'm not sure whether that is a filter. There are many filters. You can refer this documentation. List filter, I think there is no string filter. Comment filter, hashing, network, IP address, JSON, mathematics. So if you are getting any mathematic, let's say there's no port, so there should be some port. Let me run everything. I want to show you some mathematical expression you can do. Okay, so let's pick this MTU. It should be starting only. Let's say this one. So Ansible datetime dot day. So display me this one also. Host was host, and then this one dot day. Okay, so okay, so first I'm showing the host name, then I'm showing the IP address, and make sure that IP address is v4, then only you display. And then I'm saying display the day, what is the day today, and then I'm going to apply one. First let's execute this and to show you what it will show you, what it will display in that configuration file. And then we'll apply a mathematics filter. That's no attribute Ansible date time dot day. What was that? Date time date is there. Okay. We'll check something else. Okay, sorry. I have to mention like this because I'm using the hash format. So now if I look at this, it is showing me the 30 date, which is today's date. Okay, now on this number I want to perform one mathematical filter. You might have some requirement, so you might be getting some number, and before pushing that particular number, actually you want to perform some mathematical operation. So I can apply here, let's say refer this. You can say given power of 2 my variable, which is a variable, and power 2 power 5. Let's say you can say root. Okay, just root. Now let's execute. Root can only be used on number of float is required. Okay, there should be some float. Let's say power. Okay, so it says I can do like this. Plus 5. Let me try this. Okay. Sorry guys, bear with me because this is something I'm also doing first time. Something got disturbed in Apache. Hmm. We run again. Anyways, so just to show you like how we can perform the filter. Sorry, this is not happening because it may take some time to find out what is the problem. So you can refer this documentation to find out what all options are available you to perform the further operations on the variables using filter. Okay, then any questions? I know this was not done completely, but I gave you some idea, so you can refer the documentation to understand more detail. Any questions before we continue further? Okay, so next thing is delegation. Delegation is something like now whatever task we are doing in this playbook, everything is happening on the remote node. Let's say you want to run a script on one particular host, okay, and the using Ansible. So one option is you fire the script on that particular host and then you run the playbook. But what I want is you configure the playbook for all 100 servers, which is a part of infra group, and then to run that script I want to delegate only one host to run that. It could be your local host, it could be any one of those 100 servers host. Use that particular thing you perform using delegation. So in exam, like what I was telling you, they gave you the question that you need to download the file and say Apache configuration file using get URL module. Get URL module is used to download a file from a given URL. Like if you want to download an RPM, so you can download that RPM using get URL module. But the thing is, it will download in the remote node, because in playbook whatever things you are doing, it is doing on the remote nodes, not on your local workstation. So if you want to download that RPM in your local machine but in the same playbook, that thing you can manage using delegation. How? Let's say host infra come true, remote user brush task, download a file, get URL destination. Okay, to show you downloading a file, I don't have any files, so I'll show you to download one file. URL destination. Okay, URL and destination, I can say ec2.py mod 0755. So first I'll show you without delegation, and then okay, so this path of destination, obviously, so I have to make it home fresh because this is the path available in the remote node. Okay, so first I'll show you whether we have this file available on the remote nodes. lsltr ec2.py is no such file. There also no such file. Now I'm going to run this file. Let's save it, and I'm going to run this playbook. Show the delegation.
Spelling mistake, I think. Host. Third line.
Yeah. Okay. So all good. Done. So it downloaded the file. Now if I check here, we have the file with 755 permission. That's all. So, and do I have this file available at my this one? No, because this is the different path. I don't have that path. There is no such path. There is no such path. So now I want to download this file on my local host. I don't want to download at my remote node. So for that, I can mention here delegate to localhost, and I will change this path. And now run. All good. You see the arrow which is saying that RHEL node is remote node is delegating this task to localhost. Now if I do this, users brush EC2, I have this file 755 permission. Now I downloaded on my localhost using delegation. So I perform this task actually to my, I delegate this task to my localhost. Clear? Now here I mentioned this username. Obviously you might not be aware that which is a username. So for that you can use environment variable for to access some of the shell default variables. Obviously your username can be given by the shell variable also, which is log name or user, right? So those details you can refer like this, and double quotes, and this one, and what is that value? Locate, I think so. Let me run it first. I think there should be some problem. Print statement string dev user locate tnv user.
You not used curl bracket, I think.
Sorry,
After you
lookup.
user.
Sorry.
Yeah.
This is the lookup. No, the function is lookup, not locate.
Okay.
Print statement. Okay. Lookup env somewhere. Home. user. Okay, like this. Destination brush not writable. Okay. But we made it become true and destination brush is not writable. Anyway, some issue, but it is able to fetch the file. So that's what I wanted to show you, that it is fetching the file, it is downloading to the localhost using delegation, and we can use lookup variable to access the shell variable. Obviously user is the shell variable. You can use user, shell, log name, pwd, or any kind of variable. If you want to access inside the Ansible, you can access like this using lookup variable. And after the curly braces, you can add further path if you think any further path will be available. Like I want to download this file inside the user home directory. There is another directory called Ansible training, so I want to download there. So I just used this variable to get the home directory, and then I added the further directory name where I want to download the file. So it downloaded the file in my local host, though I'm writing this playbook for my infra group. So this is how you use delegation to perform any task and delegate a task to any other host. There, instead of localhost, I can mention Ubuntu node also. I can mention RHEL node, that I want to download this file only on this host and not any other host. So it will skip all other hosts for this task.
So instead of doing infra, can we mention that it's a local host, like host colon
You
local
can
host?
mention localhost, but there is no use of delegation then. This whole playbook is written for localhost, not for the infra group. Right?
Okay. Yeah.
What I'm saying here is, you are writing this playbook for infra group. Let's say here we have only one task. You have 100 tasks here, let's say, in this playbook, which is for infra group. Okay.
Okay.
But
In
only
that
one
you're
task
adding.
you want to perform, but in that, and all among all those 100 tasks, you want to perform only one task for one server. So that task you can delegate to one host. That this task is mentioned for only this host and not for any other 99 hosts.
Okay, got it.
Got it? So like you wanted to download that Apache configuration file. Okay, so rather than downloading on the remote node, it will now download on your local host. Now the file is downloaded in your local host, then you can start performing the making changes in that configuration file and then push back to the remote nodes. Got it? Otherwise, you
Yeah.
have to download on the remote nodes, then you will write another task to pull that file from remote node to the local host. So it is two tasks. Here you are
Right.
doing
Right.
same thing but with one task only.
Yeah. Understood.
So anything else? Anybody else? Okay, now I am going to this thing is down. Serial. Okay. Now I'm going to show you how to reboot the server and wait. Ansible will wait for the server to come up, which is a very common, thing we do, like patching, or let's say any activity which involves reboot. And obviously after reboot also you have to do further task on that server. So those things also you can manage using Ansible. I'm mentioning only one host because I want to work on one node only, and become true remote user. So this is how you write a playbook, and in the playbook actually you write a task to wait for something. So let's say you did something, you installed something, and before moving further to use that configuration you want to pause the playbook. In the meantime you can go to any of the server and check whether the configuration was correct. If it was correct, you can continue. If it was incorrect, you can immediately abort the playbook before it can proceed to the further task. Okay, because sometimes maybe Ansible might not be aware that whatever he did it was correct, right? It might not be as per the expectation you wanted. So though you have mentioned the desired state, Ansible did that, but you were expecting something more or something else which was not done. So in that case you can wait for some seconds of time, and then check in the meantime in any of the server whether it was correct. If it was correct, then continue. Otherwise immediately you can abort the task. So like here I'm using pause module. Pause is for pausing the playbook for a given seconds. I'm pausing here for 30 seconds. In the meantime, I'll go to the server, I'll check, and I'll come back. If it was fine, it will continue to the next task. If it was not fine, I can immediately press Control C and it will not go to the next task. Otherwise, if I don't press anything, after 30 seconds, it will continue to the next task. So let's execute. Just to show you, I have used debug module to show the message. You can write any task. Okay, configuration or patching or reboot or anything you can write, but just for this practice I'm just mentioning the message. You got the message. This is my message, and then it is waiting for 30 seconds. You can press Control C, C for continue, or Control C then A for abort. If you think you check the server and it was not correct, you can abort here itself. Otherwise wait for 30 seconds and it will continue to the next task, and you should see the second message which is after this pause. See, it was done, and then we got another message. This is my message after pause task. So this is one way of waiting for something. Playbook will wait for something. Playbook will wait for some amount of time actually for something. There is another way to wait for one port number to be available or some protocol to be available before Ansible can proceed to the next task, which is obviously after reboot. So let's continue to the next same task. Just to fasten this, I have reduced the time to 10 seconds. Okay, now I am rebooting the server using shell module using the reboot command, and async and poll. This is something actually which async we use actually when we fired a command and we want to check back whether that was successful or not. Okay, if you don't want to, if you just fire the command and forget about it, you don't need to mention anything in poll. You can mention 0 or you can even ignore that section. But when you want to check back whether that command is successful, you can mention poll and number of seconds. So every 10 seconds, for this example, every 10 seconds it will check whether that task was successful, whether task was completed, where the task is actually. Async is number of seconds, that how many seconds it should wait for that, it should fire that command. Then we are using wait for module to check that port is available or not. So it will polling, first task it will be polling in every 10 seconds. As soon as that server is up, our next task, which is wait for, it will be waiting for the 22 port to be available before it can continue to the next task. I can mention here timeout also. If you think that my server should be up in 5 minutes and not more than that, you can mention here timeout and 300 seconds. It will wait for 300 seconds. If SSH port is not available within 300 seconds, it will abort the playbook and it will consider that server has not come up. So for now, I will not mention this. And once wait for port 22 is available, it will display this message. So let's run this. Find the host. There is actually one problem with this RHEL node, so I'll change it to Ubu node. Every time I do reboot, there's some problem it appears. So I'll execute the same playbook with different node. It has rebooted, but there is some problem. It doesn't give always SSH connection, and I don't know why. So I'm doing same thing with Ubuntu node. It is rebooting and this got disconnected, you can see here. And if you look at this, it is rebooting, and this you can see it is waiting for the server. Let's see. Server is up and we got the waiting for a SSH port to be available. Once it is up, it displayed the message. This is my message after reboot, and my playbook is completed. That's how you can make async call for reboot. We actually use async call for the reboot, or if you want to fire any background jobs, or if you think any job which might be taking your terminal always, like if anybody is aware of Ruby on Rails, so when you start the Rails server, it always occupies your terminal. So those kind of commands you can fire using async. Just fire it and forget about it. So any doubt? That was the last topic.
Yeah, Prashant, suppose we have 10 servers to reboot. Out of that, 8 servers came up before 5 minutes. So 2 got stuck in between, like some file system check or something. So will it continue to the next task or it will abort?
So like I said, if you have mentioned, so like I said, if you have mentioned timeout in this wait for, it will wait for that particular time. Okay, if you have not mentioned timeout, it will keep on waiting.
Okay, then only it will proceed with the next task.
Yeah, next task will not be continued until that task is finished.
Okay.
Okay, so if you have mentioned timeout, let's say 5 minutes, so it will wait for 5 minutes. If everything is fine and came up within 5 minutes, it will continue to the next task. If 5 minutes server was not responded, it will not continue to the next task, obviously, because that task was not completed. So it will give error and abort immediately.
Okay.
Okay. Anything else?
Yeah, nothing from my side.
Sorry, didn't catch about async value. Can you please repeat that?
Okay, so async we use actually when we want to perform some action which might take some time. for example, reboot. So we rebooted and we don't know how much time it will take to reboot. It will take them to come up, right? So we need to mention some particular number of seconds, okay, so that it will wait for the command to complete. Okay, so if, for example, I mentioned 300 seconds, 5 minutes, it may take 5 minutes to reboot the server. Might be some file system it was doing, it was waiting for file system to be released or something like that. So 5 minutes, I mentioned that you take 5 minutes to execute this command. And then once you started, every 10 seconds you poll whether that task is completed, whether that command was fired and task is in progress or not. Then if, for example, if you fired one command, let's say, which the command which might take 10 minutes and should be running in the background, for those kind of commands you can mention async, but you don't need to mention poll. You can remove the poll section, and then it will not care, it will not poll for that task to check whether it is completed. It will just fire and forget about it. So that's where we use async and poll, where we want to know the status of the job or we don't want to know the status.
So what is the difference between pause and async?
Why are you mixing pause and async?
No, because I understood it is.
Pause has nothing to do with your async calls. Pause is just to wait for your just to let your playbook wait for some time. It is saying you wait for me, I'll come back, and then you proceed. So I'm saying you wait for 10 seconds, and after 10 seconds you continue to the next task. It playbook is not doing anything, is not checking anything, it is just paused. In async and poll, it is doing something and it is also checking in the background.
Okay.
Pause is just to pause your playbook. You are pausing the playbook. That's it.
Okay.
Anybody else? Okay, so the last topic is Ansible Tower. Ansible Tower is a paid version of whatever things we did now, creating user, giving security access, writing, not writing playbooks. I mean, whatever things we did just now, everything you can do using Ansible Tower. Ansible Tower is a graphical interface provided by Red Hat, and the advantage of Ansible Tower is you can look at the they will provide kind of reporting. So when you fire a playbook to the number of servers, you will get chart summary that how many servers were completed successfully, how many servers were had errors in the graphical format, in the graphs and all, charts and all, and you will see the figures and all, everything present in front of you in the kind of form of reports. And you can immediately map a playbook to the number of servers using graphical just checkbox and drag and drop facility. Everything you can do except writing playbook. You cannot write playbook in the tower. That thing you have to write in the text format, like I write in front of you now. Once playbook is written, you can just go to the tower, assign that playbook to the multiple groups or users, whichever users are allowed to execute that playbook, and then on one click you can execute that playbook. It will be executed on those hosts. That is the only advantage. You cannot write playbook in Ansible Tower. That you have to do on your own. And that is paid version. You can download. I think it is for 7 days something. It is free available. You can download and you can install it. You can access, but some of the features are not available in trial version. So that's all. I'm done. If any questions, if you guys have, just let me know before we can wind up. And today or maybe max by tomorrow, I'll download all the recordings and upload in the OneDrive and share with you all. Okay, so are we good to wind up for today?
Yes, from my side.
Yeah.
In case anything, we will contact you.
Yeah, anytime you can send me mail or you can contact me over link. If I'm available, I'll respond to you. Otherwise, you can send me mail.
Sure.
Okay.
Thank you, Prashant.
Bye.
Thank you so much, Prashant.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
Prashant. Thank you. Bye.